Dear Diary, I should have trusted my instincts the moment I walked through that door, but when you're 23, drowning in student debt, and your car just died on you for the third time this month, you don't ask too many questions when someone offers you triple the normal babysitting rate. You just say yes and pray it's legitimate. My name is Emma Grace, and 3 weeks ago I thought I knew what desperation looked like. I was wrong. It started with a post on a local parenting forum. Simple enough. Experienced babysitter needed for 2 children, ages 4 and 7. Excellent pay. Immediate start. Must be comfortable with overnight stays. The phone number was listed, no email, which should have been my first red flag. But I called anyway, and a woman named Victoria answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting for anyone, to respond. Her voice was smooth, cultured, the kind that came from expensive schools and country clubs. Emma Grace, she repeated when I introduced myself, as if testing how my name felt in her mouth. What a lovely name. Tell me, dear, are you afraid of the dark? I laughed nervously. No, Mum. I've been babysitting since I was 16. That's not what I asked. The silence that followed made my skin prickle, but then she laughed. A light tinkling sound that seemed to erase the tension. I'm sorry, dear. I have a rather dark sense of humour. My children are wonderful, but they can be challenging, especially at night. My youngest, Lily, has terrible nightmares. And my son, Noah, well, he's at that age where he tests boundaries. I need someone strong, someone who won't run at the first sign of trouble. I can handle challenging, I said more confidently than I felt. Can you? Another pause. The pay is $300 per night. Cash. I'll need you 3 nights a week, sometimes 4. Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays are guaranteed. My husband and I have obligations, social commitments that can't be rescheduled. $300 a night. My mind raced through the math. That was nearly $4,000 a month for part-time work, enough to fix my car, catch up on rent, maybe even put something away for once in my life. I'm interested, I said. Wonderful. Can you start tonight? I know it's short notice, but our previous sitter quit rather abruptly. She said something about a family emergency, but between you and me, I think she simply wasn't cut out for the job. Some people aren't built for this kind of work. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to ask more questions. What kind of work? Why did the last sitter really quit? Why was she being so cryptic? But the broken down Honda in my driveway and the past due notices scattered across my coffee table made the decision for me. I can be there by 6, I told her. That evening, as I pulled up to the address Victoria had given me, I felt my stomach twist into knots. The house wasn't what I expected. It was massive. A 3-story Victorian mansion set back from the road, surrounded by ancient oak trees that seemed to lean toward the structure like conspirators, sharing secrets. The windows glowed with warm light, but somehow that only made it look more isolated, more separate from the rest of the world. I sat in my car for a full 5 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to convince myself this was normal. Rich people lived in big houses. That wasn't weird. The fact that the nearest neighbour was at least a quarter-mile away wasn't weird. The way the shadows seemed to move in those tall windows wasn't weird. You need this job, I whispered to myself. You need this money. I grabbed my overnight bag. Victoria had been clear that she and her husband wouldn't return until morning, and walked up the long driveway. The gravel crunched under my feet, and somewhere in the distance, a dog howled, not barked, howled. The front door opened before I could knock, and Victoria stood there, backlit by the chandelier in the foyer. She was beautiful in that untouchable way some women are. Tall, slender, with dark hair pulled back into a perfect chignon. Her dress probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, but it was her eyes that caught me. They were ice blue, and when she smiled at me, the warmth didn't quite reach them. Emma Grace, she said, stepping aside to let me in. Right on time. I appreciate punctuality. The inside of the house was just as impressive as the outside. All hardwood floors, expensive rugs, and artwork that probably belonged in a museum. But there was something off about it, something I couldn't quite name. Maybe it was the way every surface seemed too clean, too perfect. Or maybe it was the smell. Underneath the lavender air freshener, there was something else. Something metallic and wrong. "The children are in the living room," Victoria said, leading me through a hallway lined with family portraits. I glanced at them as we passed. Victoria and a handsome man with dark hair, her husband, I assumed, standing stiffly beside two children who looked like they'd been ordered not to smile. We entered the living room, and I got my first look at Lily and Noah. The little girl was curled up on an oversized couch, clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. She was tiny, for 4 years old, with wispy blonde hair and enormous brown eyes that seemed too old for her face. Noah sat in an armchair by the fireplace, a tablet in his hands, deliberately not looking up when we entered. He was 7, according to Victoria, but he had that guarded expression I'd seen on kids who'd learned not to trust adults. "Children, this is Miss Emma," Victoria announced. Neither child responded. "Lily, Noah, say hello to Miss Emma." "Hello," Lily whispered so quietly I almost didn't hear her. Noah said nothing. Victoria's smile tightened, but she turned to me with practiced ease. "They're just shy. They'll warm up to you. Now let me show you the house before we leave." The tour was quick, almost rushed. First floor, kitchen, dining room, living room, bathroom, and Victoria's home office. "Off limits," she said firmly. Second floor, 4 bedrooms, including the children's rooms, and the master suite. You won't need to go in there, plus another bathroom. Third floor, storage and my husband's study. You're not to go up there under any circumstances. Do you understand? "Yes, ma'am." "Good." She led me back downstairs to the kitchen, where she'd left a stack of papers on the granite counter. Emergency numbers, bedtime routines, dietary restrictions. Lily has a mild peanut allergy. Nothing life-threatening, but she'll get hives. Noah is lactose intolerant. Bedtime is 8 o'clock sharp. No television after 7:30. No guests, no exceptions. And Emma... She paused, those cold eyes fixing on mine. "The doors and windows must remain locked at all times, all of them. Check them twice. I can't stress this enough." Is there a security concern?" I asked carefully. Victoria's expression flickered just for a moment, and I saw something that looked like fear. But then it was gone, replaced by that smooth, perfect mask. "We live in an isolated area. It's simply a precaution. We have a security system, but it's best to be thorough." Before I could ask anything else, a man appeared in the doorway. This had to be the husband from the portraits, tall, distinguished, with silver threading through his dark hair. He was wearing an expensive suit and an expression of barely concealed impatience. "Victoria, we're going to be late," he said, not acknowledging me at all. "Of course, darling." She turned back to me, pulling a cell phone from her purse. "This is a house phone. Keep it with you at all times. My number is programmed in. If anything happens, anything at all, you call me immediately. Don't call the police. Don't call anyone else. Call me first. Understood?" "Understood," I echoed, taking the phone. It felt heavy in my hand. "Excellent." She gathered her coat and purse. "We'll be back around 7 tomorrow morning. The children's breakfast preferences are in the notes. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen." She paused at the doorway, her husband already heading toward their car. "Oh, and Emma, if you hear anything strange tonight, noises from upstairs, footsteps, doors opening, ignore it. Old houses settle. It's nothing to worry about." And then they were gone, leaving me alone in that enormous house with 2 silent children, and a growing sense that I'd made a terrible mistake. For the first hour, everything seemed fine. I made the kids dinner, chicken tenders and rice for both of them, following Victoria's detailed notes. Lily picked at her food while Noah ate quickly, still not speaking. I tried to engage them in conversation, asking about school, their favourite games, anything to break the uncomfortable silence. "Do you guys like living here?" I finally asked, desperate for any response. Lily looked at Noah, who finally glanced up at me. His expression was unreadable. "It's a house," he said flatly. "We live here. Do you have friends in the neighbourhood? Kids you play with?" "We don't go outside much," Noah said, returning his attention to his plate. "Why not?" "Mummy says it's not safe." I wanted to ask what that meant, but something in the way he said it, the resignation in his voice, made me hold back. These kids were scared of something, I realised. Or they'd been taught to be scared. After dinner, I suggested we play a game. Lily perked up slightly at this, retrieving a worn board game from a cabinet. As we set it up on the coffee table, I noticed her glancing repeatedly toward the windows, even though the curtains were drawn. "Lily, sweetie, are you okay?" I asked gently. She looked at me with those two old eyes. "You locked all the doors, right?" "Yes, I did, just like your mum asked." "All of them? Even the basement door?" I felt a chill run down my spine. Victoria hadn't mentioned a basement. "There's a basement?" Noah shot his sister a sharp look. "We're not supposed to talk about the basement." "Why not?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "Because," Lily whispered, "that's where the bad man lives." The words hung in the air between us, and I felt every hair on my arm stand up. I looked from Lily's frightened face to Noah's carefully blank expression, trying to figure out if this was a childhood game or something more serious. "Lily," I said softly, kneeling down to her level, "there's no bad man in the basement. Sometimes kids imagine scary things, but—" "She's 4, Noah interrupted, his voice sharp. "She doesn't know what she's talking about. Let's just play the game." But Lily's eyes had filled with tears. "I'm not making it up. I hear him sometimes at night. He walks around down there, and sometimes—" She stopped, biting her lip. "Sometimes what, honey?" "Sometimes he comes upstairs." My heart was pounding now, but I forced myself to stay calm. Kids had vivid imaginations, especially in old houses with creaky floors and strange sounds. This was normal. It had to be normal. "Okay," I said, making my voice bright and reassuring. "How about this? After we play our game and get ready for bed, I'll check the whole house, including the basement. I'll show you there's nothing to be afraid of. Deal?" Lily nodded hesitantly, clutching her stuffed rabbit tighter. We played the board game, some kind of princess adventure that Lily clearly loved and Noah tolerated for his sister's sake. I noticed how protective he was of her, how he'd gently correct her when she moved her piece wrong, how he'd let her win without making it obvious. Whatever was going on in this house, these kids had each other, and that bond seemed unbreakable. At 7:30, I turned off the television and announced bedtime preparations. Both children went through their routines without complaint, brushing teeth, changing into pajamas, picking out tomorrow's clothes. They were remarkably self-sufficient, I realised. Too self-sufficient for their ages. Lily's room was decorated in soft pinks and purples, with fairy lights strung around the canopy of her bed. But I noticed something odd. There were 3 different night lights plugged in around the room, and heavy curtains covered the windows, even though we were on the 2nd floor. "Can I have extra lights tonight?" Lily asked as I tucked her in. "Please." "Of course, sweetie, but you're safe here. I'm right down the hall if you need anything." She grabbed my hand with surprising strength. "You won't leave, right? You won't go away like Miss Jennifer." "Miss Jennifer was your last babysitter?" Lily nodded. "She was nice at first, but then she heard the noises too, and she left in the middle of the night. She didn't even say goodbye." My mouth went dry. "What kind of noises, Lily?" Before she could answer, Noah appeared in the doorway. "Lily needs to sleep. She gets nightmares if she stays up too late." I kissed Lily's forehead and followed Noah to his room across the hall. His space was the opposite of his sister's. Minimal decorations, books neatly organised on shelves, a desk with homework arranged in precise stacks. The room of a child who needed control over something in his life. "Noah," I said as he climbed into bed, "I want you to know you can talk to me. Both of you. If something's wrong, if you're scared of something—" "We're fine," he said quickly, too quickly. "Mom and Dad take care of us. We don't need anything." "But your mom said Lily has nightmares, and Lily seems really scared of—" "This house is old," Noah interrupted, his voice taking on a rehearsed quality. "It makes noises. That's all. Lily is little, so she gets scared. But there's nothing wrong. Everything is fine." I wanted to push, to ask more questions, but the exhaustion in his eyes stopped me. This kid was 7 years old and already carrying the weight of protecting his little sister from whatever haunted this house. "Okay," I said gently, "but I meant what I said. I'm here if you need me. Good night, Noah." "Miss Emma," he called as I reached the door. Thank you for being nice to Lily. She really likes you. I like her too. And you, he smiled, a real smile this time, small but genuine, and then rolled over to face the wall. I left both doors cracked open and made my way downstairs, the house phone heavy in my pocket. The silence was oppressive now that the children were in bed. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked loudly, and every small sound seemed amplified. The hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the house settling, the wind against the windows. I checked all the doors and windows on the first floor, just as Victoria had insisted. Everything was locked tight. Then I remembered Lily's words about the basement door. Victoria hadn't mentioned a basement during the tour. In fact, she'd been very specific about showing me only the first and second floors. But if there was a basement, I needed to check it. Not because I believed in Lily's bad man, but because an unlocked door was a security risk, and Victoria had been adamant about security. I found the basement door in the kitchen, tucked into an alcove I hadn't noticed before. It was solid wood, painted white to match the walls with a simple brass handle. When I tried it, it was locked. Relief washed over me. Locked meant secure. Locked meant no one could get in or out. I started to turn away, but then I heard it. A sound from below, faint but distinct. Footsteps as someone was walking around in the basement. My hand froze on the doorknob. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to grab the kids and get out of this house. But I forced myself to think logically. This was an old house. Old houses made sounds. Pipes settled. The foundation shifted. It wasn't footsteps. It couldn't be footsteps. I pressed my ear to the door, holding my breath. There it was again. Not the random creaking of old wood. These were deliberate, rhythmic. Someone walking slowly across a floor. My hand shook as I pulled out the house phone Victoria had given me. I should call her. That's what she'd said. Call her if anything happened. But what would I even say? I heard footsteps in your basement that you didn't tell me about. Instead, I searched the kitchen for keys. There had to be a key to the basement door somewhere. I went through drawers as quietly as I could, my heart hammering against my ribs. Nothing. I tried the door again, jiggling the handle. Still locked. The footsteps below had stopped. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe the stress of being in a strange house with scared children had gotten to me. Maybe the doorknob turned under my hand. Not from my side, from the other side. Someone was trying to open the door from inside the basement. I jerked my hand back like I'd been burned, stumbling backward until I hit the kitchen island. The doorknob stopped moving, and I stood frozen, staring at that white door, waiting for it to burst open. Nothing happened. Seconds stretched into minutes. The house was silent again, except for my ragged breathing and the pounding of my heart in my ears. Slowly, carefully, I approached the door again. I tested the handle. Still locked. Whatever was on the other side couldn't get through. But someone was down there. Someone Victoria hadn't mentioned. Someone who had access to the house. My mind raced through possibilities. Maybe it was a maintenance person. Maybe Victoria's husband had come back for something. Maybe it was a home security feature, some kind of patrol service that checked the property. There had to be a logical explanation. Except Victoria had said they wouldn't be back until 7 in the morning. She'd said to call her if anything happened, not to call the police. She'd said the last babysitter had quit abruptly. I pulled out the house phone with trembling fingers and dialed Victoria's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, it went to voicemail. Mrs. Victoria, this is Emma. I paused, trying to sound professional and not terrified. I need you to call me back as soon as possible. There's something in the basement, and I need to know if someone is supposed to be here. Please call me back. I ended the call and immediately checked on the children. Noah was asleep, sprawled across his bed with one arm hanging off the edge. Lily was curled around her rabbit, her nightlights casting soft shadows across her face. Both of them safe, both of them peaceful. I couldn't tell them what I'd heard. I couldn't scare them more than they already were. Back downstairs, I dragged a chair from the dining room and wedged it under the basement door handle. It wouldn't stop someone from breaking through, but it would at least slow them down and make noise. Then I settled into the living room, where I could see both the front door and the kitchen, the house phone beside me. 10 minutes passed. 20. My phone didn't ring. I tried calling Victoria again. Voicemail. At 11 o'clock, I heard it again. Those slow, deliberate footsteps in the basement. This time, they were followed by other sounds. Scraping, like something heavy being dragged across concrete. Then, a dull thud that made the floor beneath my feet vibrate slightly. Someone wasn't just walking down there. They were doing something. I called Victoria 4 more times over the next hour. No answer. At midnight, I made a decision. I couldn't sit here all night wondering what was in that basement. I needed to see for myself, and I needed evidence in case something happened. I grabbed my phone from my bag and checked that it was fully charged. Then took photos of the basement door, the chair wedged beneath the handle, everything. In the kitchen, I looked for anything that could serve as a weapon. The best I could find was a large chef's knife, which I tucked into my waistband at the small of my back, covering it with my shirt. Then, I removed the chair from the door. My hand rested on the locked doorknob. I was about to try to force it when I noticed something I'd missed before. There was a key hanging on a small hook on the doorframe, so high up and tucked back that you'd only see it if you were specifically looking for it. Victoria had said not to go into certain areas of the house. She'd been very specific, but she'd left a key right there, hidden but accessible. Why? Because she knew I'd eventually hear the noises. She knew I'd need to check. This was a test. It had to be. I grabbed the key, my hand shaking so badly I could barely fit it into the lock. The mechanism turned with a soft click that sounded impossibly loud in the quiet kitchen. I pulled the door open. A staircase descended into darkness. There was a light switch on the wall, and when I flipped it, a single bulb illuminated wooden steps leading down into a concrete basement. The air that wafted up was cold and damp, with that metallic smell I'd noticed when I first entered the house, but stronger now. "Hello?" I called down, my voice embarrassingly weak. "Is someone there? I'm the babysitter. Mrs. Victoria didn't tell me anyone would be here." No answer, but I could hear something. A faint sound that might have been breathing, or might have been water dripping, or might have been my imagination. Every horror movie I'd ever seen played through my mind as I took the first step down. This was how people died, investigating strange noises in basements, ignoring every survival instinct screaming at them to run. But I couldn't run. I had 2 children asleep upstairs who were counting on me to protect them. The stairs creaked under my weight. Halfway down, I could see that the basement was larger than I'd expected. The ceiling was high, at least 8 feet, and the space extended beneath the entire footprint of the house. Old furniture was stacked along the walls, covered with sheets. Boxes were piled in corners. A workbench sat against the far wall, tools hanging in neat rows above it, and in the centre of the room was a door. Not a door leading outside or to another room. A door standing alone, built into a frame that was bolted to the concrete floor. It was heavy wood, reinforced with metal bands, and there was a complicated lock system. 3 separate deadbolts, all engaged. Something was locked in there. Or someone. I descended the remaining steps, unable to look away from that impossible door. Who builds a locked room in the middle of their basement? What could possibly need to be secured with 3 separate locks? "Emma Grace," a voice whispered from behind the door. I froze, the knife handle pressing against my spine. "Emma Grace," the voice came again, male, rough, exhausted. "Please, please help me." I should have run. Every instinct I possessed screamed at me to turn around, go back upstairs, grab the children, and get out of that house. But something in that voice, the raw desperation, the way my name sounded like a prayer, rooted me to the spot. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper. "My name is Daniel Robertson. I've been locked in here for 6 days. Please, you have to help me. Victoria, she's not who you think she is. None of this is what you think." My mind struggled to process this. A man locked in the basement, a man who knew my name, a man who knew Victoria. "How do you know my name?" I asked, taking a step closer to the door despite every warning bell in my head. "I heard her on the phone with you. The walls are thin enough that I can hear upstairs when it's quiet. Emma, please listen to me. You're in danger. Those children are in danger. Victoria and her husband, they're not the children's parents. The basement seemed to tilt around me. What are you talking about? I saw the family photos. I spoke to Victoria. Those photos are staged. Those children were kidnapped 3 weeks ago. Victoria and Richard took them. I'm a private investigator. I was hired by the real parents to find them. I tracked them to this house, and when I got too close, they captured me. This couldn't be real. This was insane. But even as I tried to dismiss it, pieces started clicking into place. The children's frightened behaviour, the way Noah seemed resigned to his life here, how Victoria had told me not to call the police no matter what, the previous babysitter who'd left in the middle of the night. If you're a private investigator, prove it, I demanded, pulling out my phone and turning on the flashlight to shine through the crack under the door. My wallet is in my jacket pocket, badge number 47832, licensed in Pennsylvania. My phone, if it still has battery, has all my case files. The real parents' names are Michael and Patricia Henderson. Their daughter is Sophia Henderson, age 7. Their son is Lucas Henderson, age 4. Not Noah and Lily. Sophia and Lucas. My hand shook as I examined the locks on the door. They required keys, different keys for each lock, and I didn't have any of them. I don't have the keys to open this, I told him. But I need to verify what you're saying. If I search your name online, there's no time for that. Victoria and Richard will be back earlier than they told you. They always come back early to check on the babysitter. That's what happened to the last one. She found me, tried to let me out, and they caught her. Emma, I haven't seen her leave this house. I think... His voice broke. I think she's still here somewhere. Ice flooded my veins. What do you mean, still here? I mean, I heard her screaming, and then I never heard anything again. There's another room down here, behind the water heater. I think that's where they put her. I spun around, searching the basement with new eyes. Behind the water heater in the far corner, barely visible in the shadows, was another door. This one was slightly ajar. Emma, don't look, Daniel said urgently. Whatever you do, don't look in there. Just get the children and get out. Call the police from outside. Tell them everything. The Hendersons, the real parents, they're offering a $200,000 reward for information. That's how I got involved. But none of that matters if you don't get out alive. I was already moving toward that second door, my phone's flashlight cutting through the darkness. I had to know if the previous babysitter was in there, if she needed help. The smell hit me first. Sweet and rotten. Unmistakable, even though I'd never encountered it before. My hand covered my mouth and nose, but I pushed the door open anyway. The beam of my flashlight found her immediately. Jennifer, I assume that was her name, was slumped in the corner of a tiny room that looked like it had once been a storage closet. Her skin was grey, her eyes open and staring at nothing. Dark stains covered her shirt, and the concrete floor beneath her was discoloured with dried blood. I stumbled backward, bile rising in my throat, and slammed the door shut. My phone slipped from my shaking hands and clattered to the floor. Emma! Daniel's voice was urgent. Emma, are you okay? She's dead, I whispered. Oh God, she's dead. They killed her. I know, and I'm sorry, but you need to focus. You need to get the children and get out of here now. If Victoria and Richard come back while you're still here... A sound from upstairs cut him off, the front door opening. Footsteps. In the foyer. We both froze. Emma! Victoria's voice called out, sweet and poisonous. Emma, dear, we're home early. Where are you? I grabbed my phone from the floor and ran to the stairs, taking them 2 at a time as quietly as I could. I had to get to the children. I had to... Victoria was standing at the top of the stairs, silhouetted against the kitchen light. In her hand was a gun. Well, she said softly, almost sadly, I had such high hopes for you, Emma Grace. Time seemed to slow as I stood on those basement stairs. Victoria's gun pointed directly at my chest. My mind raced through scenarios, calculating odds, searching for any possible escape route. Behind me was a locked man and a dead woman. Above me was an armed kidnapper. And somewhere in this house were 2 terrified children who had no idea they'd been stolen from their real family. "I can see by your face that you've discovered our little secret," Victoria said, her cultured voice never losing its pleasant tone, even as she gestured with the gun for me to come upstairs. "Daniel has quite the gift for persuasion, doesn't he? Come up slowly, dear. Hands where I can see them." I climbed the stairs, my mind frantically working. The knife was still tucked into my waistband, but I'd have to be fast, faster than she could pull the trigger. When I reached the top step, I kept my hands raised, trying to look more frightened than calculating. "Victoria, please," I said, letting my voice shake. "I don't know what's going on, but I don't want any trouble. I'll leave right now and forget everything I saw. I promise I won't." "Oh, Emma," she sighed, moving aside to let me fully enter the kitchen, but keeping the gun trained on me. "They always say that. Jennifer said the same thing. But, you see, the problem is that you know too much now. You know about Daniel, you know about Jennifer, and I suspect Daniel has told you about the children." She said it so casually, as if we were discussing the weather. Behind her, in the living room doorway, a man appeared, Richard, Victoria's husband. He was holding a roll of duct tape and rope, his expression businesslike and cold. "Where do you want her?" he asked Victoria. "Basement, I think, with Daniel. We'll deal with them both tomorrow." My time was running out. Once they got me back in that basement, bound and restrained, I'd have no chance. The children would have no chance. "The kids," I said quickly. "What about them?" "They'll hear—" "Those brats sleep like the dead," Richard said dismissively. "We gave them their medicine tonight." Medicine. They had drugged the children. That's why both kids had fallen asleep so easily, why they seemed so compliant. How many nights had these monsters been sedating them? "Please," I tried again, taking a small step backward. "The money. You said the pay was good. I need money. Whatever you're doing, I can help. I won't say anything, I swear. I just—" Victoria laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. "Oh, you're good. I see why you've survived this long. But no, dear, we can't risk it. You're too much of a liability now." Richard moved toward me, the duct tape in his hands. This was it. This was my only chance. As he reached for me, I ducked low and spun, pulling the chef's knife from my waistband in one smooth motion. The blade caught him across the forearm, and he howled in pain, dropping the tape and rope. Victoria's gun went off, the shot deafening in the enclosed space. I felt the bullet whip past my ear as I threw myself toward the living room, using Richard's body as a shield between me and Victoria. "You little bitch!" Victoria screamed, her composure finally cracking. I ran for the stairs, taking them 3 at a time. I had to get to the children. If I could barricade us in one of their rooms, if I could call for help. Another gunshot. The banister exploded into splinters beside my hand. I reached the 2nd floor and sprinted toward Noah's room. No, Sophia's room. The girl who'd been torn from her real family, who'd been living with these monsters for 3 weeks, who'd been drugged into compliance every night. The door flew open and Noah, Sophia, stood there in her pajamas, her eyes wide with terror. Behind her, little Lily, Lucas, clutched his rabbit, tears streaming down his face. "Miss Emma," Sophia whispered. "What's happening?" I grabbed both children, pulling them into the room and slamming the door. There was no lock. I dragged the dresser toward the door, my muscles screaming with the effort. "Listen to me," I said, urgently, kneeling to their level. "Your real names are Sophia and Lucas Henderson. Your real parents are Michael and Patricia, and they've been looking for you. These people, Victoria and Richard, they took you. But I'm going to get you out of here, I promise." Sophia's face crumpled, a dam breaking. "I knew it. I knew we weren't supposed to be here. They said Mummy and Daddy didn't want us anymore, but I knew they were lying." Footsteps thundered up the stairs. "Is there another way out of this room?" I asked desperately. "A fire escape? Another staircase?" "The window," Sophia said, pointing. "There's a trellis outside. It goes down to the garden." I ran to the window and looked out. She was right. An ornate wooden trellis covered in dead vines ran down the side of the house. It might hold a child's weight, but there was no way it would support mine. The doorknob rattled. Richard's voice came through, low and threatening. Open this door right now, or I will break it down. Sophia, I said, making my decision, I need you to be brave. You're going to climb down that trellis with your brother. Can you do that? I'm scared, she whispered. I know, baby, but your real parents are waiting for you. Michael and Patricia, they love you so much, and they want you home. You have to be strong for Lucas. Can you do that? She nodded, her small jaw setting with determination that broke my heart. I opened the window as quietly as I could, the cold night air rushing in. The trellis was old, but looked sturdy enough. It had to be. You go first, I told Sophia. Hold Lucas tight and climb down carefully. When you get to the bottom, run. Run as fast as you can to the nearest house with lights on. Tell them to call the police. Tell them everything. Can you remember that? Call the police. Tell them everything, she repeated. The door shuddered as Richard threw his weight against it. The dresser scraped across the floor, moving an inch. Go now, I urged. Sophia climbed out the window with the grace of a child who'd climbed trees before. In her real life, before these monsters had stolen her. She held Lucas against her chest, his arms wrapped around her neck, and began descending. I watched, my heart in my throat, as they made it down, one careful step at a time. The door burst open just as Sophia's feet hit the ground. The dresser toppled over with a crash. Richard stormed in, his wounded arm wrapped in a kitchen towel, his face twisted with rage. But the children were running. I could see them through the window, two small figures racing across the lawn toward the distant lights of the neighbouring property. Richard looked from me to the open window, to the running children, and his expression transformed into something truly terrifying. Victoria, he roared. The kids are running. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I rushed past him, shoving him hard as I went. He was bigger than me, stronger, but his injured arm made him slower. I made it to the hallway and ran toward the master bedroom. Victoria had said it was off limits, which meant there had to be something important in there. I could hear Victoria's footsteps pounding down the stairs, heading for the front door to chase the children. Richard was behind me, cursing. I had seconds at most. The master bedroom door was locked, but adrenaline gave me strength I didn't know I had. I slammed my shoulder into it once, twice, and on the third impact the frame splintered. I fell into the room and scrambled to my feet. The bedroom was opulent, king-sized bed, expensive furniture, walk-in closets. But what caught my eye was the desk in the corner, papers scattered across it. I ran to it, grabbing handfuls of documents and shoving them into my shirt. Bank statements, passports, multiple sets with different names, photographs of other children, not Sophia and Lucas, other children all around the same age, printouts of missing person reports, a ledger with amounts of money, dates and names I didn't recognise. My blood ran cold. Sophia and Lucas weren't the first children they'd taken. They weren't even the second or third. This was an operation. Richard appeared in the doorway, his face purple with rage. You stupid girl, you have no idea what you've just done. I know exactly what I've done, I said, backing toward the window. Those kids are free and the police are coming. It's over. The police? He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You think we haven't paid off half the police force in this county? You think anyone will believe you? We're respected members of this community. We donate to charities. We sit on boards. You're just some desperate college dropout who broke into our house and tried to kidnap our children. Then, explain the man locked in your basement, I shot back. Explain the dead woman down there. Explain these documents showing you've trafficked dozens of children. His smile faltered just for a moment. That's when I knew I'd won. Not physically, not yet, but morally. He knew his story wouldn't hold. Too much evidence, too many witnesses. A siren wailed in the distance. Richard's head snapped toward the window. No, that's impossible. They couldn't have gotten help that fast. Sophia is 7 years old, I said. She's smart, she's brave, and she just saved her brother's life. She saved my life. And now she's going to destroy you. More sirens now, getting closer. Red and blue lights flickered through the trees. Richard lunged at me, but I was ready. I sidestepped, grabbed a heavy lamp from the nightstand, and brought it down hard on the back of his head. He crumpled to the floor, groaning. I ran. The house had become a maze of chaos. I could hear Victoria screaming somewhere downstairs, her carefully constructed facade completely shattered. Glass broke, a window, maybe, or a vase thrown in frustration. I didn't stop to find out. I flew down the stairs, the document still clutched to my chest, and nearly collided with Victoria in the foyer. She'd come back inside, realising she couldn't catch the children, and now stood between me and the front door. The gun hung loosely in her hand, her perfect hair dishevelled, mascara smudged under her wild eyes. "You've ruined everything," she hissed. "Do you have any idea how long it took to set this up? How much money is involved? Those children were worth $500,000. The casual way she assigned value to human lives made my stomach turn. They're not merchandise. They're kids with families who love them. Love? Victoria spat the word like it was poison. Love doesn't pay for houses like this. Love doesn't fund the lifestyle I deserve. Those brats' parents are wealthy. They can afford to lose a child or two. They'll make more. The sirens were right outside now. Tires screeched on gravel. Car doors slammed. Heavy footsteps on the porch. "Drop the weapon," a male voice shouted from outside. "This is the police. Drop your weapon and come out with your hands up." Victoria's gun hand twitched, rising slightly. For a moment, I thought she might shoot me anyway. Consequences be damned. But then her shoulders sagged, and the fight seemed to drain out of her. The gun clattered to the floor. "On your knees," the voice commanded. "Hands behind your head." The front door burst open, and suddenly the foyer was full of police officers in tactical gear, weapons drawn, shouting commands. I dropped to my knees immediately, hands raised, the documents spilling across the marble floor around me. "Don't shoot! I'm Emma Grace. I'm the babysitter. The children are safe. They ran to the neighbours. There's a man locked in the basement who needs help, and there's..." My voice broke. "There's a body down there. Jennifer, the previous babysitter. They killed her." 2 officers moved to secure Victoria, forcing her to the ground and cuffing her hands behind her back. She went limp, all the fight gone out of her. But her eyes found mine across the floor. The hatred there was palpable. "You have no idea what you've done," she said again, but quieter now. "No idea who you've crossed." "I saved 2 children," I replied. "That's all that matters." More officers flooded into the house. I told them about Richard upstairs, still groaning in the master bedroom. I told them about Daniel Robertson in the basement, about the 3 locks that needed keys. I pointed to the documents scattered around me, the evidence of their trafficking operation. An officer helped me to my feet, her expression a mixture of concern and respect. "You're very brave," she said. "Most people wouldn't have..." "I wasn't brave," I interrupted. "I was terrified. I just didn't have a choice. Those kids needed someone." She nodded understanding and guided me outside, where I could finally breathe. The cool night air filled my lungs, and I realised I was shaking, delayed shock hitting me all at once. An ambulance was parked in the circular driveway, and I could see Sophia and Lucas wrapped in blankets, being checked by paramedics. When Sophia saw me, she broke free and ran, throwing her arms around my waist. "You came out," she sobbed. "I was so scared you wouldn't come out." I knelt down and held both children close, tears streaming down my face. "I promised I'd get you out, didn't I? I keep my promises." "Are we really going home?" Lucas asked, his voice small and uncertain. "To our real Mommy and Daddy?" "Yes, baby, you're really going home." A detective approached, an older woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanour. "Miss Grace? I'm Detective Patricia Morrison. I need to get your statement, but first I wanted you to know that Sophia gave us quite a detailed account of what happened. That's one incredibly brave little girl." "She saved all of us," I said. "From what I'm hearing, you all saved each other." She glanced at the children. "We've contacted Michael and Patricia Henderson. They're driving here right now from Philadelphia. Should be here within 2 hours. In the meantime, we need to process the scene and get everyone's statements." I spent the next 3 hours sitting in the back of a police car, going over every detail of the night. The basement door keys were found in Victoria's purse. Officers brought Daniel Robertson out on a stretcher, dehydrated, malnourished, but alive. He managed to give me a weak thumbs up as they loaded him into an ambulance. Jennifer's body was carefully removed. I learned later that she'd been 21, a nursing student trying to pay for tuition. She'd done nothing wrong except answer the same ad I had, accept the same offer. It could have so easily been me in that basement closet instead of her. Richard was taken out in handcuffs, his head bandaged, muttering about lawyers and mistakes and how we'd all regret this. Victoria went silently, her perfect mask finally and completely shattered. As the sky began to lighten with the first hints of dawn, a car came speeding up the driveway, a sensible sedan that screeched to a halt. A man and woman burst out, their faces etched with hope and terror and desperate love. "Sophia! Lucas!" the woman screamed. The children, who had been dozing in the ambulance under heated blankets, jolted awake. For a moment, they seemed confused. They'd been told for 3 weeks that these people didn't want them anymore, that their old life was a lie. But then Lucas's face crumpled. "Mommy?" he whispered as if afraid to believe it. "Yes, baby. Yes, it's Mommy. Daddy and I are here." And then they were running. These 2 children who'd been so quiet, so resigned, so carefully controlled, running and crying and throwing themselves into their parents' arms. The 4 of them collapsed into a heap on the gravel driveway, sobbing and holding each other, and I had to look away because the joy was so intense it felt private. Patricia Henderson found me afterward, still wrapped in a shock blanket, still shaking slightly. She grabbed my hands, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for bringing my babies home. I don't have words for what you've done. You risked your life." "Anyone would have done the same," I said. "But they didn't. That other girl, Jennifer, she tried and they killed her. You could have run. You could have left the kids and saved yourself. But you didn't. You stayed and fought for children you just met." Michael Henderson joined his wife, one hand still holding Sophia's. "The detective told us about the documents you found. Because of that evidence, they're already tracking down the other children in their network. You didn't just save our kids. You probably saved dozens of other families from the same hell we've been living." The next few days were a blur of police interviews, news cameras, and sleepless nights where I jolted awake convinced I was still in that house. The story went national. College student saves kidnapped children, uncovers trafficking ring. My face was everywhere. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. I learned more about the operation as the investigation unfolded. Victoria and Richard weren't their real names. They were Veronica and Robert Ashford, wanted in 3 states for child trafficking. They'd been operating for almost 6 years, taking children from wealthy families and selling them to buyers overseas. They'd gotten increasingly bold, keeping Sophia and Lucas longer than previous children while negotiating with a buyer in Eastern Europe. Daniel Robertson recovered in the hospital and gave his full statement. He'd been hired by the Hendersons 2 weeks after their children disappeared, when the police investigation seemed to stall. He'd tracked the Ashfords to the house and attempted to infiltrate their operation by posing as a potential buyer, but they had seen through his cover. Jennifer Martinez, the previous babysitter, had discovered Daniel in the basement and tried to free him. They caught her before she could get help. The coroner determined she'd been dead for 5 days. 5 days while I'd been answering that job ad, while I'd been worrying about my stupid car and my stupid bills. The guilt of that. The randomness of fate that put me in that house instead of someone else, that let me survive when she didn't, weighed on me heavily. But there was good news too. Using the documents I grabbed from the master bedroom, police tracked down 8 other children who'd been taken over the past 3 years. Not all were recovered. Some had already been sold and the trail went cold. But 8 families got their children back. 8 families got to experience the same tearful reunion I'd witnessed in that driveway. The Hendersons insisted on paying me the $200,000 reward they'd offered for information leading to their children's return. I tried to refuse. It felt wrong to profit from something so horrible, but Patricia wouldn't hear of it. "You saved our children's lives," she said firmly when she came to visit me at my apartment. "You deserve every penny and more. Besides, I think you'll put it to good use." She was right. I paid off my debts, fixed my car, and set aside enough for tuition. The rest went into a fund, the Jennifer Martinez Memorial Scholarship for nursing students. It felt right, honouring the girl who'd been brave enough to try, even if she didn't survive it. I also gave a substantial amount to Daniel Robertson to help with his medical bills and recovery. He'd lost 20 pounds during his captivity and would need months of physical therapy, but when I visited him in the hospital, he was in good spirits. "You know," he said with a weak smile, "I am supposed to be the professional investigator. Some hero I turned out to be, locked in a basement while a 23-year-old babysitter saved the day." "You helped," I insisted. "If you hadn't told me what was really going on, I might have believed their lies. You gave me the information I needed to understand what was happening." "You gave me hope," he replied seriously. "When I heard you on that phone with Victoria, heard how young you sounded, I thought you'd be another victim. Instead, you were a warrior." The trial came 6 months later. I testified for 3 days, walking the jury through every detail of that night. Veronica, sat at the defence table looking small and ordinary, nothing like the commanding presence she'd projected in that house. Robert, kept his head down, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. Sophia testified too, in a closed session with just the judge and attorneys present. I waited outside the courtroom while she was in there, and when she emerged, she ran straight to me. Her real parents were there, of course, but she'd bonded with me during that terrible night, and I'd become something like an honorary aunt. "Was it scary?" I asked, stroking her hair. "A little," she admitted. "But I remembered what you said, that I was brave, so I told them everything, just like you did." The verdict came quickly. Both Ashfords were found guilty on multiple counts of kidnapping, human trafficking, attempted murder, and murder in the first degree for Jennifer's death. Life in prison without the possibility of parole for both of them. I felt no satisfaction watching them being led away in chains, only a deep sense of relief that they could never hurt another child. On the 1-year anniversary of that night, the Hendersons invited me to a small gathering at their home in Philadelphia. It was just family and a few close friends. Nothing fancy, just a celebration of having their children back. Sophia had grown several inches and had started therapy to process her trauma. She was doing well, her therapist said, resilient in the way children can be when they're surrounded by love and safety. Lucas was thriving too, though he had nightmares sometimes and still slept with that stuffed rabbit he'd carried through the whole ordeal. After dinner, while the adults chatted in the living room, Sophia pulled me aside to her bedroom. On her desk was a school assignment, an essay titled My Hero. "I wrote it about you," she said shyly. "Do you want to read it?" I sat on her bed and read about myself through a 7-year-old's eyes. She wrote about how scared she'd been in that house, how she'd tried to be brave for her little brother but didn't always succeed. She wrote about the night I'd arrived and how she'd known, somehow, that I was different from the other babysitters. She wrote about the moment I'd told her the truth, that she was Sophia Henderson, not the fake name they'd been forcing her to use, and how that was the moment she'd allowed herself to hope. And she wrote about watching me fight for them, how I'd put their safety above my own, how I'd promised to get them out, and had kept that promise no matter what. "You showed me what courage really means," she'd written in her careful, childish handwriting. "It's not about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing the right thing anyway. When I grow up, I want to be brave, like Emma Grace." Tears blurred my vision as I finished reading. I pulled her into a hug. This little girl who'd survived so much, who'd been so brave herself. "You know what?" I said. "You're already braver than I am. You climbed down that trellis carrying your brother. You ran for help. You told the police everything, even though you were terrified. You saved all of us that night, Sophia." "We saved each other," she said, and she was right. That night, driving home through the dark streets, I thought about how randomly our lives intersect, how a broken-down car and past due bills had led me to answer that job ad, how those circumstances, which had seemed like disasters at the time, had put me in the exact place I needed to be to save 2 children's lives. I thought about Jennifer Martinez, who'd been just as brave but hadn't been lucky, I thought about all the other children still missing, still trapped, still hoping someone would find them, and I made a decision. The next morning, I enrolled in a criminal justice program. The reward money would cover tuition with plenty left over. If Daniel Robertson could become a private investigator and dedicate his life to finding missing children, so could I. I'd been tested in the worst way possible and had discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. It seemed like a waste to go back to my ordinary life after that, to pretend I hadn't changed. So I didn't. 2 years later, I opened my own investigation firm, specialising in missing children cases. It's not glamorous work, lots of dead ends, lots of heartbreak, lots of nights where I wonder if I'm making any difference at all. But then I think about Sophia and Lucas, safe with their parents. I think about the other 8 children recovered because of that one terrible night. I think about all the families still searching, still hoping, still believing that someone will bring their child home. And I get back to work. Dear Diary, it's been 3 years since that night, and I still have nightmares sometimes. I still see Victoria's cold eyes, still hear those footsteps in the basement, still smell that awful, sweet, rotten scent from Jennifer's room. But I also see Sophia's smile when she calls me on my birthday. I hear Lucas's laugh when I visit for holidays. I feel the weight of the locket Patricia Henderson gave me, a gold heart with pictures of both children inside. I took a job to care for someone's children and I feared for my life, but I also found my purpose. Sometimes the worst nights lead to the brightest mornings. Sometimes being broken down and desperate puts you exactly where you need to be. Sometimes one person's courage, even when they're terrified, can change everything. I'm not the same Emma Grace who walked into that house 3 years ago. That girl was lost, directionless, just trying to survive. The woman I am now knows what she's fighting for, and she'll never stop fighting.